He's coming to the right. He's up there. He's about 100 out right now.
This week on Kentucky Afield. Due to COVID-19, we've had to make adjustments, and we're unable to bring you our annual live spring turkey hunting call-in show. But we certainly wanted to answer your questions.
All right, first one is a Facebook question from Dennis.
Join us now for our spring turkey hunting question and answer show, recorded live on Facebook.
Such a pretty fish.
Beautiful.
This pond is plumb floated with frogs.
They're everywhere in here. Yeah, this is a good fish right here. Really good fish.
Come here, girl.
Yeah, boy.
That's a big rabbit. Nice job. Yes! Yes! My first muskie.
Mercy, Leo!
Yeah, look at it. It's a keeper.
Here it goes. Boom!
Wow, that happened fast.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles. Hey, it's that time of year again. We're here to talk all about turkey hunting. I'm here with Zach Danks, who is the Turkey and Grouse Program Coordinator. Zach, I can't ever remember a year where I've looked so forward to turkey season. Without having any sports and the way TV has been due to this coronavirus, I'm looking forward to getting outdoors.
Absolutely. I'd say there's a lot of Kentucky hunters that are right there with you.
Well, you know, you might notice today looks a little different. We are actually coming to you from the studios here in Frankfort, Kentucky at the Slato Wildlife Education Center. We're not in our normal location in Lexington, Kentucky, and the KET studios, but we still want to get the information out to you. If you're excited about turkey season in the spring as I am, we want to make sure that you get your chance to ask your questions and get those questions answered by Zach. You may notice we don't have a law enforcement officer today, and it's going to be the two of us. We're doing our social distancing.
That's right.
Just the two of us, and so if you ask a question that is very specific to law enforcement, we may have to ask you to call in and get that question answered by someone who's qualified to do that. But we're here to talk about turkey hunting. If you have a question, we'd love to hear it. Send it out to us through our Facebook page. So go to Kentucky Afield Facebook and submit that question there. We already have some questions. Let's jump right in and start answering some of these questions. What do you think?
Let's do it, Chad.
All right, first one is a Facebook question from Dennis. With the number count of turkeys down here in Kentucky, will there ever be a closing to the turkey hunting for a year or two? This one of those ever questions are kind of hard to answer those, aren't they?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, ever in that context, sure, we're gonna always be monitoring the population, and if things ever got dire enough, then we would look at potentially closures. We're not at that point yet. There is a general perception of turkey decline in the southeastern states and in the midwestern states and even in the northeastern states. The whole range of the eastern subspecies of wild turkey. There's potentially many reasons for that. But before you speculate on specific causes, one overarching thing to keep in mind is that we've had turkeys on the landscape now for several decades. Mm-hmm. And when populations are first restored, they're going to grow, exponentially, really fast. And so we're going to get used to more and more turkeys every year. Over time, though, that's going to kind of hit a ceiling, and because you can't grow forever. Once that population stabilizes, then you're going to have fluctuations up and down. And truth be told, we've just been in a kind of a lull the last few years.
All in all, people are asking about hunting seasons and turkey seasons. All of our seasons are on. If you've seen a rumor or someone has actually stole the department's logo, went out there and said, hey, the seasons are closed, none of that could be further from the truth. All the seasons are on as scheduled, nothing has changed. And our turkey population, although it may not have been as strong as our absolute peak just a few years ago, still pretty strong.
That's right, yeah. We have a population that rivals any in surrounding states. Kentucky really is blessed to have a great mix of forest land and farmland and pasture land. Turkeys use all those habitats, and particularly in sort of central Kentucky, you have that great mix. You still have great turkey populations in far western Kentucky or far eastern Kentucky, but naturally where you got farms and fields coming together and we got a lot of that mixed ag kind of landscape in our state, we've got pretty strong turkey populations. So as I said though, we're going to be monitoring that. All the states are, we put our heads together at meetings every year and we talk about these things. There's research ongoing. So definitely the turkey management biology community is watching this, because we know it's important to hunters and it's important to us.
Logan, this is an Instagram question. What is your preferred time to hunt gobblers? Morning, midday, or evening? This is a good question, and this is going to depend on who you ask too. Does the choice depend on the weather conditions, and if so, what is the ideal conditions for each? Very good question.
Sure enough.
Tell me a little bit about your preferred time to turkey hunt.
Well, as turkey season draws near, you get excited about the whole prospect. And if you're like me, I've got this disease where I feel like I have to wake up really early. I have to get out there well before daylight, get set up. All that is part of the tradition. And that said, honestly, that first 30 minutes of the morning, I've rarely killed birds. It's usually later in the morning when I've killed mine. But that said, I'm going to encourage people to get out in the woods because it's fun all throughout the day. Usually to me, the sweet spot's between 9 to noon.
Let's talk about this a little bit because if you don't have a bird fly right off the roost, right to you, and it's hard to get that close to a turkey and have them still fly to you. If you don't have a turkey that doesn't fly right off the roost right to you, chances of you pulling that gobbler away from another hen, because they're usually gobblers and hens roosted together.
Right.
It's tough.
It's real tough.
It's tough. So they come down, do their thing, spend a little time together, and all of a sudden, Mr. Tom realizes that his hen has left him. That's when you tend to be more successful to call a gobbler in my experience.
Sure, yeah, I think a lot of folks would agree with you. In fact, the few times that I've had it work like it's supposed to, off the bat, has been later in the season when there's fewer hens around for that gobbler to be trying to entertain. So that's just like I said, it's something in my experience, but certainly you've got to be, if you're there hunting, then be in it at least till noontime, because that you never know what's going to happen to cause that hen. Either she's been bred by the gobbler, or maybe she just happens to be hanging out around him, but she's going to break off eventually, and you want to be in and around when that happens.
Ideal situations and conditions for each. I will tell you that what I have noticed, last year on opening day, I was able to take a bird 20 minutes before dark. I mean, it was right before they were getting ready to go up to roost.
Nice.
And we were hunting in the woods on a high spot where we knew that they were going to come back to and roost. That's where they tend to come. Kind of like deer. If you're
scouting,
it's if you know where they're coming from the bed and where they may be returning,
that's right.
That might be a good spot to be. But I'll tell you, I have noticed that if you have a lot of rain and it's raining hard, those turkeys like to be in the fields.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If you got a day and it's a situation where it's going to be rainy and nasty,
get your Vortex and don't be afraid to sit there, because that's...
Get in the fields, because man, they, for whatever reason, I don't know if everything's moving and it's harder for them to get their senses together.
Yeah.
I've had more luck in the rain hunting turkeys in open spaces.
Yeah, I would say it's got to do with the disturbance in the woods and everything moving and them not being able to see or hear as well. So they know they're more secure where they can get out in the open.
They got those eyes. So if they get out there and anything coming across the landscape they can see, I think they feel more
And they
safe.
can stand, they'll be out there in a horizontal gale, It's just amazing what they'll stand out there in. So.
All right, next question here. This is from Curtis, the Facebook question. Why is there a 2-week gap this year between youth season and the regular season opener? Let's talk a little bit about the season dates. This year, our youth season comes in on April 4th and 5th. That's a 2-day season for youth. And then the general season comes in April the 18th, and it will last all the way until May the 10th. Talk a little bit about this 2-week window.
Yeah, so it's got to do with the way our regulations are written and have been written since 2006. We've not had any real changes since then. The youth season always comes in the first Saturday of April. So it's that Saturday and Sunday. And in some years that may be April 1st, some years it may be April 4th, like this year will be. Sometimes it's closer to the regular season. The regular season always comes in the Saturday closest to April 15th. not exactly on April 15th. So what that means is in this year, just the way the calendar falls, it's April 18th. It's a few days later. Now, is that going to matter in terms of hunters getting out there and able to encounter these gobblers while they're, really gobbling hard? It could be. Honestly, that is too hard to predict. And it could turn out that it is just as good as any other year. I mean, we're talking just a few days either way. In Kentucky, it's going to range from about April 12th, 13th, all the way out to about the 18th. It's just the way that the calendar falls. Mm-hmm. So just always know that it's that Saturday closest to April 15th, and it runs for 23 consecutive days.
Okay. So. It's a long season. It really is. And I'll tell you, the great thing about that time of year is if you go out and you hunt the opening day, 23 days later, man, how the landscape changes.
Sure.
It's amazing. You get out there and you start looking around and you see how far you can see, mm-hmm. and all of a sudden, a week's worth of foliage come up. You got that next weekend, and you're like, wow. Yeah. That's the time of year that just everything changes here in the state of Kentucky.
You've got a lot more concealment by that point too, so you can move around a little bit more. I mean, there's still turkeys. They're still going to pick you out if you move too much. But
we have a Facebook question from Cousin. Can you use a crossbow to harvest a turkey in the spring and or fall seasons?
Sure. Yeah. During the spring season, you can use any of the legal hunting methods. So that's modern shotgun, muzzleloading shotgun, modern bow, traditional bow, and crossbow as well. So that's during spring. And in the fall, of course, we have crossbow and bow are not concurrent with each other like they are for deer. So you can use a crossbow during the two separate 1 week long crossbow seasons we have, or you can use it during the fall shotgun season.
Okay. Mike, Instagram question. How does the overall turkey population look this year compared to the last few years? We talked a little bit about that. And then I have another question here from Jay. Wants to know about some counties are showing increases in stable populations and some counties are showing some declined population. Wants to know if Kentucky would ever look to have it earlier in some areas where they're having better turkey populations. Would we ever look at a split season? I think that's kind of confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, first off, I don't want to never say never, basically, because we never know what could come down the pike. To the first part of that, yes, I'm going to say that I think I'm expecting a good season this year, at least as good as we had last year. And that's because last summer and the summer before, we had better hatches. So 2 consecutive years with better reproduction usually means we're going to have a stronger harvest. And that's coming after 2 to 3 years of relatively poor hatches. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what sent us down for the last few years, kind of down from our 5 or 10 year average a little bit. And of course, that's variable across the state. Not everywhere had a better year last year, but most areas did. Now, as far as will we look to have a split season? Honestly, the timing of the season is, that is set biologically. So I would really not recommend that if we change up regulations, it would not be to allow season to start earlier in some areas than others. And that's because, even though I-75, for example, runs, how long does that run from the Tennessee border to the Ohio border? 200 miles at most, if that. There's still not that much variation in the timing of reproduction. Sometimes people will say they start gobbling earlier in the South. They don't. They don't start laying eggs, nesting any earlier in the South than they do in the North. Some recent research out of South Carolina shows that basically the average date peak of nesting is right around the time our season's coming in, well after their season has come in.
Now, there's been some breeding and some things taking place before that, but that's when the nesting, you're saying, start, right? Right.
So in our state, basically, when our season comes in the middle of April, it's when the majority of hens have been bred, and I say majority, I mean, around half or so, have been bred and are starting to go and start a nest. They're starting to lay. Okay. So some states wait until they start nesting. So that would be another week and a half for us, and that does kind of start to hurt you on the gobbling.
And what about zones for turkey? Having a zone 1 county versus a zone 2, like we do with deer. Has there ever been any talk about that as far as to help out some counties that are struggling?
To do something like that, I would want to have a lot more information at my disposal. And by that, I mean better estimations of the population beyond the main ways we look at, which is the harvest data and our brood surveys.
As far as you talk about more information, right now, does the department, this is a question for Facebook, does the department have any hunter surveys going out this year? Are we doing any type of surveys as far as?
Yeah, we will. We'll do, so for the last 2 years, I've done a postseason survey where I try to get information from hunters on how much they hunted and what their harvest was like. Because while we can look at telecheck, we need to know how much they hunt, that effort they expend. Because if it takes us longer to harvest the same amount of turkeys, then that indicates there's fewer turkeys. Conversely, if we can harvest the same number of birds in less time, there were probably more turkeys around, everything else being equal. So we're starting to collect that kind of information. So the way that's going to work typically is, 2 years ago we had it open to anybody online, but this year and last year also, we'll randomly select hunters from amongst all the licensed buyers. And we'll send a certain percentage of a survey and try to collect that.
Here we have a question here. Wants to know if the coronavirus is going to have any impact on campgrounds or WMAs. Have any conversation about WMAs closing up? We know the Army Corps of Engineers announced some stricter policies based on tournaments where there's a whole lot of people there, but I've heard nothing as far as, how much more social distance can you get? When turkey hunting is truly something where you're out kind of on your own a lot.
Right, for WMAs where, there's not much camping happening on WMAs at all compared to campgrounds and things. Obviously everything's subject to change with continual increase in what we know about the disease and the guidance we get from the governor's office and everything. Don't expect there to be anything. At this point, all the WMAs continue to be open, so we should have access for hunters to get out and enjoy things. And I always encourage you, our public lands harvest has kind of gone down recently, and I don't think that's necessarily because the population's down. I honestly think that fewer people are taking advantage of our wildlife management areas. So get out, try one that you've not hunted, try one of the federal areas, and try to hunt somewhere new, because again, as of right now, nothing has changed.
What gauge shotgun is legal for turkey hunting? We get this question every year. Tell me a little bit about what gauge shotguns is legal, and then tell me what you use.
Yeah, nothing larger than a 10 gauge and nothing smaller than a 410. So we do allow 410s.
Okay.
I have 12 gauges. It's all I've ever used. 20 works well. In fact, if I ever changed, it would probably be to go to a 20. Particularly now with the loads that are out there now. They're so effective.
What is the best type of call to use for locating turkeys? So there's a lot of turkey calls that people use out there. For a locator call, man, I've seen everything from people that are fantastic on an owl call to people that just, they kind of yell a hooty hoo type noise or a crow call. What do you recommend?
I think it's totally happenstance. It's what that bird wants to hear. I've always wondered, what am I doing wrong when I locate? Because often I try to locate with, whether it's crow or owl or whatever it is. Sometimes I'm slamming the truck doors just as effective. It's usually about time I get back to the truck for kind of a lunch time, and I slam that door, the door of the truck, and then you hear the gobble, and that gets exciting. But calls, that's to each his own. I try to use a mouth call as much as I can, simply because it allows me not to move so much. But that said, I sound pretty horrible. But honestly,
have you ever heard a real turkey? Sometimes I've heard
I don't worry too much about
my
it.
entire life, and a real turkey walked in.
I bet that it would be rare that a hen turkey would ever win a calling contest. They probably don't sound as good as some of the great callers we have in the state.
And for a person that's getting into turkey hunting, and I'm still a fairly novice turkey hunter. I've hunted several years and I've harvested birds, but the fact is, in most situations, overcalling is going to be the biggest mistake you're going to potentially make.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, last year's turkey season, we undercalled, we tried to work a bird in, it came in, got in 60, 70 yards, went back out, called it back in again. It was just a weary bird.
Yeah.
And you know how we got that bird in? we called way too much, tried to do a fight and purr, tried to create every bit of turkey ruckus that we could.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that's what it took to close that bird. I would never start out on a bird that way.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, it was getting late for us. What did we have to lose? You
Right.
know?
Oh,
so at times you never know. There's not a one cure fix all for turkeys.
No, there's not. It's funny because, you know, I read a lot, and I always have, and you'll read stuff that says don't call too much, and obviously that advice holds true sometimes. And then sometimes it takes being really aggressive. So, you know, the science really can't tell us what a given turkey, a given gobbler is going to want to hear or going to respond to on any given day.
Yeah.
You know, what we know is they start gobbling in March, and they'll gobble all the way till June. You know, if you don't hunt them. When we start hunting them, they get tight-lipped.
Oh, yeah.
Or they die.
It's because you don't hear turkeys gobbling doesn't mean you don't have turkeys around you. I can't tell how many times I've stood up to walk out and be like, well, there they go.
I know the last 2 years, I've gotten so many calls in late May. It's just amazing. People talking about still hearing birds gobbling, and don't give up on them. You know, you just never know. So try different things. One day, try being aggressive. You know, just what the heck, give it a shot.
We have a Facebook question here. What can someone do to help their local turkey population?
Great question. Near and dear to my heart. And that is contact us. We have biologists that can give you advice on how to improve your habitat on the farms that you own, manage, hunt on, lease, whatever. Anything you can do to leave some nesting habitat, especially leave some brooding habitat. If you don't know what brood habitat is, think patches of ragweed up to your head or so. In other words, fields that have been left fallow for a year or two, that is really important habitat. And the way we farm nowadays doesn't leave a lot of that on the landscape. The major predators affecting turkeys, it's not the coyotes and the bobcats. They will get one opportunistically, and we've all called in coyotes, you know, but it's really those nest predators, you know, whether it's raccoons, possums, it's rat snakes, it's crows, everything likes to eat them. And hen turkeys, it's really hard to predict where they're going to nest. They may nest in what to me seems very logical, which is a nice treetop, you know, something that's kind of a place she can hunker down and hide in. But she may also nest in the middle of a tall grass field or a wide open pasture, hay field.
What advice would you give about hunting pressured public birds, especially after the first week? So if you're going to go on and try to hunt turkeys on a WMA that's gotten a lot of pressure, say we've got some that are very big pieces of property, say Taylor's Lake, for example. A lot of people live in and around Taylor's Lake. There are quite a few turkeys out there. If you were going to go hunt that after a week into the season, what type of recommendations would you give a hunter?
I'd probably try to go in the middle of the week. If you're lucky enough to have that flexibility off from work where you can pop out in the middle of the week, that's when I'm going to be there. And I was telling Chad before the show, this year's, I'm kind of making it a little personal charge to hunt public lands more this time. I think, you know, people just don't hunt as much later in the season, and you can have some real luck. The last bird I killed on public lands was like the Thursday before season went out. So you just need to keep going, and you need to keep going at it, and maybe adjust your tactics. You know, don't expect to be able to pull a bird on a string with your sweet calling. The last bird on public lands, I was hunting with my buddy a few years ago. It was the middle of the afternoon. We had actually kind of quit hunting. We were walking and talking about the habitat there, to be honest. And we heard a bird gobble, and I am not kidding. Within the minute, we sat down, called just 2 or 3 times, and he had a bird on the ground.
I tell you
so
what,
you just never know.
Nothing more exciting than when you know this bird's committing. It's coming fast. Where you're looking for a place to set down because it's going to happen really fast. If you like turkey hunting, that's the reason you like it right there. You hit a call a few times. You may have had a couple of days of no luck, and all of a sudden, you know this bird is coming right now, and I have got to get set up. It's going to run right to me.
Absolutely. Like I said, that's the temptation of early morning. You know, calling while they're still on the roost. You know, Harold Knight, he kind of cautioned against that a few years ago because, you know, you can call to them on roost, but, you know, they've got you pegged at that point.
They know,
But it's hard not to because you want to hear them gobble. It's so fun.
I'll tell you what, I'm super excited about this year. Hey, Corona's going around, this coronavirus, and I know people are stuck in the house. A lot of people aren't working, got the kids around. Take time to get out there, take care of your physical health, but you know what? Take care of your mental health as well. Spend a little time outdoors. It's a beautiful time to be here in the state of Kentucky. Most of these outdoor recreations that we all love so much, be it fishing this time of year or looking for antlers or turkey hunting right around the corner, there's really not a better way to spend time out and about. Take care of yourself. We got a lot of great things coming your way here on Kentucky Afield. We've been filming a lot of segments. We've got some things coming up about how to stay safe during turkey season. We'll have it out in a couple of weeks about ticks. We've got a lot of great fishing shows coming your way. So make sure you stay tuned. Have a great turkey season, and make sure you get out there and get you a bird.